Poised for Exit is a show for business owners who want to achieve a successful exit based on their own terms. Your business exit will likely be the biggest financial transaction of your life, and for most, you'll have one shot at doing it right. The topics and guests we feature and the stories they share will provide valuable ideas and strategies to improve operations and grow enterprise value so you can achieve the best possible exit outcome. Now here's your host, award-winning certified exit planning advisor, Julie Keys.
Welcome, everyone, to Poised for Exit, the exit planning podcast show. In this episode, we're featuring an advisor who specializes in helping business owners with their personal planning as it relates to an exit, a topic that's often overlooked with exit planning, but very necessary to cover. We're going to hear from her right after these messages from our show sponsors. Are you a business owner getting ready to transition? If so, I recommend True North Mergers and Acquisitions as your confidential strategic partner. They understand your business sale isn't just about one buyer and the price, but what you net that counts. In other words, what you get to keep. When you're ready for a higher level of representation that delivers consistent results, contact True North M&A to do the heavy lifting of selling your business. Learn more at tnma.com. That's tnma.com.
Selling your business may be the furthest thing from your mind, but that doesn't mean you should wait to plan. At TrustPoint, we understand the nuances that come with selling a business and are here to guide you. From unlocking tax efficiencies to minimizing risk, we'll develop the strategies to ensure you're prepared. So, when the time arrives, you'll be ready to enjoy the best years of your life. Learn more at TrustPointInc.com. That's TrustPointinc.com.
For business owners, it can be overwhelming to start planning a transition or exit strategy, but it's so important to avoid unwanted outcomes and unexpected tax bills. The CPAs at JAK, John A. Knutson and Company, can guide you and help make sense of the numbers. Our firm was established over 90 years ago, and we've assisted countless companies with ownership transitions. Leaving your business is a process that takes time, so contact us today to discuss your situation. Visit our website at jakcpa.com. That's jakcpa.com.
Listeners, my name is Todd Crow, and I'm the president of the Twin Cities Exit Planning Chapter. If you're a business owner and advisor and want to learn more about the world of exit planning, you're invited to visit the Twin Cities chapter of the Exit Planning Institute. You can expect top-level education delivered by subject matter experts at every monthly meeting. Grow your network and draw from the learning that could be a game changer for your business or your practice. There's no pressure to become a member, so come and see what the buzz is all about. Our meetings are held the second Wednesday of the month, 7:30 to 9 a.m. See the show notes for more information and registration links.
Hello, Poised for Exit listeners. We are here today with Cindy Jennings, who is the founder of Interwovenly and specializes in helping business owners turn their aspirations into actionable post-exit plans. Cindy, welcome to Poised for Exit.
Hi, thanks. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you too. I mean, like I said in the opener of the show, this is a topic that is so important to successful exit planning, but it's also so overlooked. So many advisors just don't go here because it's kind of the softer side of exit. It can be complicated, and there's emotions involved, and lots of indecision. Sometimes owners just don't know, what it is that they really want, and you're the person that actually helps them figure that out, right?
I do, yes.
Awesome. Well, before we dive in, I would just like to have you share a little bit about your background and how did you get here? How did you get to this place where you do such important work for business owners?
Yeah, well, it's definitely not been a straight journey, for sure.
Yeah.
I have a bit of a sort of perfect background, I feel like, in many ways. I have a communications background, business owner background myself. This is the second business I've begun. I also do a lot of behavior work and organizational change for management consulting for about 10 years of my career. So, and that included a lot of strategic planning. And all of that kind of came together when I decided I was ready to go out and do this new venture here. And honestly, I was meeting with my own financial advisor, and he asked me, what's my long-term plan? And from a business standpoint, I could answer it really clearly. From a personal standpoint, I struggled. And and I thought, well, this is not good. Yeah. And as a strategic planner by trade and, sort of thinking long term, I just, sought out to figure that out for myself. And then I found out that my business colleagues and friends also needed this, and it has just evolved. And I gravitate toward entrepreneurs, being one myself, and
Sure.
just finding how little support on this softer side, if you will. You said the E word, emotions, right?
Right.
It requires some vulnerability, and it's a big transaction. You mention it in your podcast, your book, all that this is a significant transition in their life.
Yes.
Transition and transaction, right?
Oh, for
And
sure.
I find so many unprepared, and I'm on a mission to help business owners navigate this successfully, both from a financial and a personal standpoint.
Fantastic. When you think about it, after all of the sacrifice that, because you've been there, I've been there, our clients are always obviously there or have been there, they really deserve to have the best possible outcome and have the best chapter of their life ahead, right?
Yes.
And I bet that you do your best work in making an impact and providing that through the services that I understand that you've got a program that's called LifeWise. It's a business exit program that specifically targets that. So let's talk about what that is and how that works for business owners and helping them get through this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the most overlooked piece, right? When you think about selling your business, you're thinking about maximizing your valuation,
Right.
optimizing your financials, getting your structure in place, taking care of your employees, getting the best price, finding the right buyer. And that's all the stuff that feels a bit more tangible and, it's more heady.
Yeah.
And the personal side is what comes next is what gets overlooked so often. I mean, I know you've probably said the same stat over and over, but 75% of business owners regret selling. And
Right.
the reality is, unfortunately, I'm working with far too many of former owners and they're in this bad place and they're trying to get out of it. And, they've spent maybe 6 months or a year doing the things that, they're traveling and they're doing those initial, like, I've waited so long to do these kinds of things.
Sure.
But what happens is then they kind of hit this crisis zone. And I think if we can plan sooner, and the sweet spot is maybe 3 to 5 years before, at least 2. When you hit that year, then you're in that structural, optimizing your financials. You're just busy down. But if you know ahead of time kind of where you're headed, there's advantages for everyone. The business owner kind of has a sense of where they're headed and what they're moving toward. So like the what's next, and making sure that feels like something they want to go toward versus just fear and uncertainty, right?
Fear and uncertainty.
My process also helps get the spouse and family on board as well if they have one.
Good.
Because it's really crucial. The family, is their life is about to change as well.
Right.
And so just to try to help that have a destination, basically. And we look at a 10-year time frame. So it takes you from, if you're 5 years before a sale, to at least 5 years afterward. And this provides the spaciousness for things to change, for priorities to shift. We look at 8 key areas of life. So not just your financial and not just your family, not just your vacationing. It's everything. It's your purpose and meaning. And really looking and uncovering what that looks like. And it's a really fun process if we can get people to think about it ahead of time.
Well, what if they say, well, I hardly ever get to golf, so I'm just going to golf every day. That's how I'm going to spend my years. What do you say to that?
Yeah, golf is 4 hours a day if you can do it every day, right?
Right.
And
what are you going to do with the rest of the day? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, I've seen a lot of advisors that will have like the worksheets, like, okay, plan out your day 7 days a week. And I think that's a good exercise at a really granular level. But where this process can take you is it's a little bit higher. We're more like 30 and 10,000 foot view of like what's going to, what are your values? Our values change over time, right? So they're going to be different when we're in our 20s than when we're, having children and family versus they're out of the house. And so really allowing space for your values to change and to really think about like, what will I value when I leave this business? So if I was the people person and the inspirational person at work, like how am I going to fill that need when I leave? Or if I was the strategic number cruncher, how am I going to fill that need when I leave? Or is it going to be a need? Is that box checked and I have a different piece of my my life that I want to highlight more. And so looking at a little bit higher up than that, then you can go into that granular piece. But yeah, I mean, golf to me is like at ground level, literally.
Right. Yeah.
And so golf can be a piece of it, but not
Well,
all of it.
and it seems like when that's the answer that you get, then they clearly haven't thought through all the things that you just mentioned. And I love the fact that you're recognizing that values change. I mean, you know, we hear so much in business circles and have for maybe the last 10 years or so how important it is to identify and articulate your core values in your business, right? And that your values personally should, not be different than your values in your business, because then you're kind of living a dual life. But they do evolve. And like you said, as you get older, as you move into another chapter of your life, your values might be a little bit different. You might still have, the same beliefs about life, right? But what you value might be a little bit different. I think it's that's a really good tip for our listeners out there to think about that. Like, how has that changed? And I know you work with them on a framework that goes out 10 years. You have got a 10-year visioning framework that you help them implement. So they're looking
Yes.
at big picture, like you said.
Yeah, I love that you're keying in on that, because that's one of the pieces of looking at that is one of the exercises I take people through is, I don't really have a name for it, but I would call it a value spectrum, if you will. And it's like, it is kind of a revelation that values do change.
Yeah.
I think there's something about, there's some anchoring piece to your life when you're like, yeah, I have these values, and maybe some span your entire life, and that's great. But, if you are raising children, your values are way different than when you're post-exit and you're 65 and your children are grown. Your values are just different. Family might be still a value, but it's going to look a little different. So we use that 10-year framework to think about, okay, you're selling your business. And if we just take family as an example, now it's maybe a financial, like, how are you going to distribute your wealth, toward the end of your life? Are you going to do it now while they're alive? Are you setting up something, for your grandchildren? What does that look like? And that gets into estate planning for sure. But it's also like, how am I going to engage with my grandkids, with my kids?
Right.
It just can be, there's so many possibilities and so many creative ways I've seen people do that. That's beyond just handing over money, like really getting involved with the values of their grandchildren, the values of their children, and even of the family unit itself.
Well, and also, we as entrepreneurs like to be productive people. And so without owning a business or running a business, maybe our need for productivity and relevancy feels like, anyway, that it might be going with it, right? And that doesn't have to be the case. So I'm sure that you work with them too on how do you carry forward the expertise and the wisdom and the knowledge that you've acquired over all these years, and how do you use it in the next thing? I mean, some owners just want to keep working, but they want to do it on their own terms. So maybe they consult or mentor, right? Or join as board members.
Yes, and I love that you're keying in on that too. It's interesting. All of those things are possibilities, and one of my favorite parts is actually finding out there's sort of some assumptions. Like, there's some people who are like, oh, I guess I'll just go be on a board because it's the thing to do. Or I worked with one
That's a
business
lot of
owner
work.
who was, I know, right?
Yeah.
I was working with one owner who was like, well, I guess I'm going to go. I guess I'm a little bit at loose ends. He was tied up in a non-compete for a couple of years post-sale. So he couldn't do a lot in his own industry. And he's like, I guess I'll go mentor at SCORE, which is a wonderful organization. But he didn't sound excited.
Like he was supposed to do it, right?
Exactly. Or
Sure.
it's frankly just what was in front of him.
Sure.
That was like, and many are kind of at a loss. Like, okay, I've been building my business. I understand how to do this piece. I understand how to work in my own field, but if that's cut off from me, like, then what? What do I do?
Yeah.
And the cool thing was he was able to pull together, instead of doing SCORE, which again is totally fine, he pulled together some industry buddies, cronies that, he wanted lifestyle, and they were able to do these like pop-up, like, I don't know, wisdom meetings, I would call them almost, where
Interesting.
they could just come together. They would, ask us anything. Here's what we see in the industry. Here's the things we wish we would have done differently. Here's the things, whatever. And then ask us any questions. he could do it from anywhere in the world, and he was still able to convey his wisdom, which was important to him. Like, he'd been through a lot in his career,
Sure.
and he
Yeah.
wanted to pass that on.
Right.
And his friends too. So he was giving back to his industry in a way that was in a non-compete. He was also helping his other friends who were in a similar situation, who also wanted to share wisdom, but were a little bit at loose ends. So a super creative way to, find a what's next that doesn't have to be a board, or a next business. It can be, but it doesn't have to be.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're the person that really kind of helps them think through what their options are. Right. And yeah, for sure. Without like guilt or, this is what you're supposed to do. I mean, I think, because entrepreneurs are super uber responsible, motivated people, that I don't know. I've seen that they kind of put that on themselves. And it's good to know there's people out there like you who are helping them think through, like, how can I just have like the most fulfilling rest of my life? And that's really what it's all about. But we know that many of them don't have someone like you working with them, and they end up with major regrets, right? So, and I think that you said earlier in the show that you work with owners who are former owners who lived through that regret, and now they're like, okay, now what do I do? So lots of reasons why they regret selling. Like you said, there are statistics out there that are, pretty disheartening when there's so many owners who regret the decision to sell. But what have you seen? And then what are some of the best ways for owners to circumvent that?
I mean, not to harp too much. I mean, it's planning ahead, right? It's really, I find it interesting. I mean, it was shocking in myself, right? And as I mentioned in my origin story, if you will, like I was a super organized, plan, goal-oriented business person, and completely, I mean, of course I had goals and things I wanted to do in my personal life, but I wasn't really very organized about it. And I've just found that, the 10-year time frame really allows time spaciousness. So you can think a little bit bigger, right? Like, okay, what if like the world is my oyster? What would I do? Like, what does that look like? And then the other thing too, and we talked about this before, is part of starting early and then having this 10-year horizon is practicing.
Yes.
You talk about, okay, if you've never taken a vacation, start with 1 week, then 2 weeks, and building that muscle up. So if you think you want to be on a board, like, start now. I mean, you can't just quit or sell your business and voila, you're on a board. In many cases, right? You have to start networking and working toward that. So
Takes a while,
it sets it sets the horizon for the ideal, the picture, to work toward.
I like that.
And then they can start testing it and tweaking it, right? I mean, life changes, and you can just work toward it.
Even, if they had an opportunity to become a member of an advisory board, that could give them kind of a flavor for, a little bit of board work at that point where, they're not in a fiduciary role, probably not getting paid. You don't have to meet as often. It's not as much work. It's more just like people being able to tap into your advice. Even if it's their particular trade or industry that they spend a little bit of time in. I've recommended that to a couple of clients who wanted to be able to take and use their expertise. And I said, well, why wait until after you sell? Why don't you try it now? See if you like it. Not a lot of risk there, and you'd be doing some good. And then you could see, well, maybe this is something for me that I would want to do in the future.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, let's talk about how the work that you're doing actually can support other people around the table. Now, we know when it comes to exit planning that it takes a team, lots of different advisors from different disciplines over the span of, the 2 to 5 year period that we're trying to get the owner ready. But the work that you're doing is supporting the deal makers and the other advisors, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I love, the work that you're doing and really bringing advisors to the table. I think as a business owner myself and working with others, I don't think it's really well known, like, how much support is available to people. And so the way this fits in, I think, is, I don't do the financial part of that, but I do think that this process helps deals get done. I've seen, when a seller isn't quite personally ready for whatever reason, that creates that friction. And, I've seen it firsthand. Owners will hesitate, they'll second guess, even back out. It's not always because of the numbers or the buyer isn't right, but emotionally they're not ready to let go, and that slows everything down.
Yeah,
So
they can definitely derail their deal. I think any M&A person out there would nod their head in agreement and say, yes, that has happened to me.
yep.
And nobody can
Yeah,
put their finger on why, because maybe they got the offer of a lifetime and they're just like, nope, not doing it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think this helps like faster decision making. So they know they're not stuck in indecision, like, "Ooh, what's next?" I already know. And
Yeah.
I've got something. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's get this business sold because I got this next thing I want to do and I'm excited about it.
Mhm.
I think it keeps them future focused, right? So smoother negotiations, because again, they know what they want. Hopefully they don't know what their number is, because part of this looking out 10 years is also working with your financial advisor to be like, okay, this is my vision. Can I afford it? Can I sustain it? Right. And so I know what my number is,
Yes.
or where my range of my number could be. So it helps
Mhm.
with that negotiation. And then I think the other thing for advisors is by getting your client emotionally ready and you get them successfully through the sales process, then in my opinion, it creates some halo effect where, like you're talking to your buddies who are also, business owners or whatnot, and you're talking about how great your process was, hopefully.
Mhm.
And a piece of that was being emotionally ready. And if you're the advisor bringing in this type of service where it's like, hey, we don't want to just get the deal done, and we're not just about your bottom line and, making this transact, but we care about you as a person. That translates. Right? That
Oh, it
translates a
absolutely
lot.
does. It absolutely
Yeah.
does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to have a team. There's no doubt about it. And they have to be people that the business owner trusts. Now, we could keep going. There's so much more that we could talk about here, but we've reached the end. And I just would like to close with asking you, Cindy, can you just share maybe 2 things that the owners listening right now can do to move the needle on this, and advocate for themselves for like having the best next chapter? What would that look like?
Yeah, I think one is I would start with values. So
Mm-hmm.
here, a quick exercise would be, what did I value as a kid? What did I love to do as a kid? What did
Mm-hmm.
I value most as a business owner? And what will I value post-exit the most? And then I think just involving your spouse, your family, if you have one, and just start thinking about, what do you want long-term? What would make your life post-exit be really meaningful?
Thank you so much, Cindy, for joining us. We really appreciate all your wisdom. And thank you, listeners, for joining us, and sponsors. Please join us again next time, and please share this episode.